What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Spencer. So there's new support, but I don't know. It's very strange. So these are all retrains, from what I understand, like Servant Idol, Keldo, and it all kind of bases around this card, Exchange of the Spirit. And if you don't know what this card is, if both players have 15 or more cards in their graveyards, pay 1,000 life points. Each player swaps their cards in their graveyard with their deck. The cards in their graveyard with their deck, and then shuffles the deck, and then you can only activate it once per duel, which is obviously a very strange card. And you're like, why would there even be support for that? I'm pretty sure, I'm like 90% sure that all of these cards are based on this duel that Kaiba had with Ishizu back it was Battle City. And I think Ishizu was Merrick's brother, and she had like a Millennium something, and he like changed his fate. Because I think one of the cards here has Obelisk in its artwork, but it's not an obelisk card, which is pretty funny. Two of them, yeah. So this is definitely that duel. So I don't know if any of these cards are going to make sense. It's kind of, she did Grave Keepers, and I think they're all like light fairies, so like earth fairies or something like that. So like it works for like that, and the new archetype that just came out, that fairy archetype, also fits in this category. I forget what it's called now, but I just did a video about it. It's funny. We'll read these cards just to see, if they're half decent. But kind of interesting that another wave of the most random support you could ever think of comes out, but nothing for Gate Guardians. I think everybody is teaming for it, and I feel like when it finally does come out, it's gonna be like meta warpingly good, because people want it so badly. But we'll see. This is Servant Idol Keldo. You can only use the first and second effect of this card once per turn. You can discard one other Earth Fairy monster, special summon this card from your hand. Then you can add one Exchange of the Spirit, or one card that listed in its text from your deck to your hand. So there's a searcher for Exchange of the Spirit now. Well, why not? You can banish this card from your field or graveyard, then target up to 5 cards in the graveyards. Quick effect, shuffle them into the deck. If Exchange of the Spirit is not on your field or in your graveyard, you can target up to 3 cards. Now, this is the interesting part about this card, because shooting Quasar, I'm telling you, is like the most underrated card in Yu-Gi-Oh! As long as Hulk is around, being able to Foolish Burial a card is so important. So the Token Collector is a great target for this. This is a great card. This is a quick effect, shuffling 3 or up to 5, and that's the important part. It doesn't say 5; it says up to 5. If Exchange of Spirit is not on the field or in your graveyard, you get to target 3 cards. But 3 cards is probably more than enough, which is kind of crazy. I feel like this card eventually, in some point, for some reason, will see play. As long as you can get it to the graveyard, and right now, you can do that really easily with Hulk. Just something to note. Blade Priest Mudra. This is also a level 4 Earth Fairy. Nice. You can discard one of the Earth Fairy monster, special on this card from your hand. Then you can place one Gravekeeper's Trap from your deck. I'd have to look at those cards, but I'm pretty sure there's some decent ones that like lock your opponent out of, using their graveyard. I'm sure that's probably what it is. The only thing I think of like with Gravekeepers and these new cards is like if your opponent's playing like Cyberus Eldritch, they would just have to like straight up scoop. But you can banish this card from your graveyard and then target up to 5 cards in the graveyards, shuffle them into the deck. So pretty neat, right? Which is cool if you swap your deck, with your graveyard, and then you can just put like all the important pieces back, so you're like guaranteed to top deck something really good. Yeah, it's up to. So if you only have 3 cards that you want, or there's only 4 cards, like you can just put all your play starters back into the deck, which is good. Theoretically, you could do some really cool things with it. Now, sending your opponent's entire deck to the graveyard more than likely is good, but at the same time, it's Gravekeepers, right? So they're not going to be able to access anything in those, which is pretty decent. I mean, it is definitely a strategy. I don't know if it's a good one, but it is one. This is Ancient Weapon Agido. You can only use the first and second effect of this card once per turn. If a card is sent from hand or deck to your opponent's graveyard, hand traps, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can special summon 1 level 4 Earth Fairy monster from your graveyard, which is neat because theoretically like literally like 35 cards are going to be in your graveyard, if not more. If this card is sent from hand or deck to the graveyard, which if it gets milled too, it's kind of neat, you can send the top 5 cards from both players' decks to the graveyard. Then if Exchange of the Spirit is in your graveyard, you can send the top 5 cards of either deck to your opponent's deck. So assuming you've milled 15 cards, you activate Spirit, right? So they're swapping. Yeah, so they go 35 goes to the graveyard, 15 goes back, and then you can mill another 5. They're down to 10 cards. If you're going to play a mill strategy, this isn't the worst card, right? And I'm also assuming that, if you're playing this deck, you don't technically have to play Gravekeepers either. You can play a lot of cards that are good to get sent to the graveyard. Now your opponent, again, might be playing that, but hopefully you have Gravekeeper stuff on some level that will let you still use your graveyard. Because I know some of the Gravekeeper cards let you still use your graveyard effects, like circumvents the field spell, and that's kind of how a lot of their cards work. This is Gravekeeper's Trap. You can only use the second and third effects of this card once per turn. It's continuous trap. While Exchange of Spirit is in your graveyard, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in the graveyard. Also, they cannot special summon monsters from the graveyard, which is great. They're down to 15 cards. They can't access their graveyard. Oh, it does say activate, so there's definitely ways to get around that, but hopefully you have the field spell. Making this card kind of useless, but we'll see what the other ones are. During your main phase, you can discard 1 card. Add 1 Gravekeeper or Earth Fairy monster from your deck to your hand. There. So there definitely is. Discarding cards kind of sucky for the cost, but it is a continuous trap. So during your opponent's draw phase, before they conduct their turn draw, and this card is already face up, declare 1 card name, reveal the drawn cards, and if it is a declared card, send it to the graveyard. Which really is like it's low key a Yada lock. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a way, or there already is a way in Earth Fairies or Gravekeepers where the top, like your opponent is top decking. At the very least, there's that fairy card that a lot Mystic Mind players use, meaning that you could get that lock going where your opponent is just milling that top card. They literally will not draw a card for the rest of the duel, meaning that the cards that they have in their hand are the only ones they can use, and they cannot use the cards in their graveyard, which is pretty darn good. That's a pretty good lock, if not like sealed tight, assuming you have any other ways to stop the cards in their hand. This is Fate-Bound Bomb. You only use the first and second effect of this card once per turn. When your opponent's monster declares an attack, which that was like the whole thing with the anime where Kaiba was supposed to attack with Obelisk, and then he saw his fate or something like that, and his fate was that he's supposed to attack with it, and this trap card was supposed to like blow up Obelisk, give it a heart attack or something. But in any case, destroy the monster with the highest attack that your opponent controls, and if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to its attack, and if Exchange of the Souls is not in your graveyard, inflict the same damage to your life points, which, who cares? If this card is sent from the hand or deck to the graveyard, you can target 1 level 4 Earth Fairy monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand, which is pretty neat. This is like a weird version of like a fusion between Mirror Force, kinda, and Magic Cylinder, sort of. So it's kind of a unique card. Probably not something that you're going to play, but it is cool that the card from the anime obviously has made its way into the TCG. Exchange of Hope and Despair. Again, Obelisk in there. You can only activate this card once per turn. If you control 3 or more Earth Fairy monsters, send all monsters on the field to the graveyard. Then each player can special summon monsters from the opponent's graveyard. Interesting. Up to the number of monsters that was sent from the opponent's field to the graveyard by this effect. Then if Exchange of the Spirit is in your graveyard, you can set 1 trap directly from your deck. Also, it can be activated this turn. Kind of cool that you can just grab whatever trap that you want. But you do have to control 3 monsters. That's a lot. Like, if you top deck this later in the duel when you need something, like, this is awful. But send all monsters on the field to the graveyard. And then, assuming your opponent can't special summon from the graveyard, which one of the cards already does, but this is a Gravekeeper's deck, meaning you're only special summoning monsters. But, again, that kind of sucks that you have to have 3. So, yeah, it's again, these are all just, like, random cards. They're not actually good or... certainly not like meta. I hate even saying that. They're just funny cards from the show. But I like cards like that. Why not? It's kind of cool to see. They've been doing a lot of that recently, especially with Egyptian God stuff. It's just unfortunate that it's boo-boo. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Other than that, that's going to do it for today's video, and I'll see you guys next time.